Hi everybody, Kaitlin Busch back again with the 4th episode of the Brain Speech Bubble. Today's episode is going to look just a little bit different because now that it's May, we're in Better Hearing and Speech Month. I know, everything has a month, but this is a really great chance for me to share some little known facts about speech, language, and the field of speech language pathology. The Speech Bubble episodes released in May will include an interesting tidbit or some kind of fact at the end. I'm also going to take this opportunity to challenge you a little bit. Later on, I'll be releasing a video with a challenge for Better Hearing and Speech Month, which should help you really appreciate how lucky you are to be able to communicate through speech. Today's activity, though, is geared toward both language and literacy and is one of my very favorite ways to work on skills in speech therapy. It's called shared book reading. I love helping parents figure out how to get the most bang for their buck while sharing a book with their kids. Book reading can go so far beyond simply pulling the words off the page, and this is such a simple activity that can easily be taught and requires very minimal effort. So according to the Institute of Educational Sciences, which is a subsidiary of the Department of Education, there are a few different things that you can engage in while reading a book that can help stimulate both language and literacy skills. So I'm going to go through each of those things one by one, give a brief explanation of what it means, and then provide an example of what that might look like using some of my favorite books. This is really easier than it sounds, and I would imagine that you're probably already doing a lot of these things as you read with your child. The point is, if you can include at least one of these strategies as you go through the book, you're really setting up your child for success in so many ways that go well beyond simply learning to read. I'm going to break down each of these elements just like I mentioned and provide you with some examples. So first is directing the child's attention to illustrations, print, or word meanings. So for this element, I've decided to use the book with no pictures, which is one of my very favorite books. So obviously, this part of shared book reading can include drawing the child's attention to illustrations, which in a book called The Book with No Pictures, there's not going to be any illustrations. But I can show you the other two parts of that, which are drawing your child's attention to print and also word meanings. So as you're going through your book, if you simply use your finger and point to the words as you go through, that's drawing your child's attention to the print. That's showing them the direction that print goes, showing them that each space means something. It's a word boundary. It's going to help with the pre-literacy skills. And then to draw their attention to word meanings, here you're just going to want to pay attention for any word that maybe you think they don't know yet. So for this one, I love it because down here you see the word preposterous. It's big, it's bold, and it's not a really common word to be in a child's vocabulary. So it's a great chance to explain to your child, what does that mean? Oh, preposterous, that's a funny word. I haven't heard that word in a long time. Do you know what that means? You can try to see if they can figure out what it means from what's around it. Well, we said so silly. Maybe preposterous has something to do with being silly. It's just a great way to kind of expand your child's vocabulary as you go through a book. So next, I'm going to share how to engage your child in discussions focused on understanding the meaning or sequence of events in a story. So for this, I'm going to use another one of my favorites, The Adventures of Beagle, the Unimaginary Friend. So for this one, Beagle's going on an adventure. So if you're going to engage your child in discussions about understanding sequence of events in a story, you're going to talk about first, next, then, last, those kind of things. So for this one, Beagle's going on an adventure. So obviously there's different phases of this adventure. First, he started out in one place, then he moved on to the next place, and then you can talk about his final destination. Sequencing is really important. It's a huge element of language, and it's a great skill to practice during books. The next element for shared book reading is called, has to do with expository passages, and that sounds really complicated, but it's not. So helping your child understand expository passages is all about helping them kind of get through nonfiction. So you're going to help provide your child with some information about a topic. So a lot of times that's going to happen in a book that's a nonfiction book. So for this one, I just have my fun with words. It's kind of like a kid's dictionary in a way. And so on here, if we go to this page, up here you see the word pine, and it goes into a little bit of a description about what pine means and what it might look like and things like that. And so what you can do for this is just kind of expand on that. Talk about, oh, pine, that's a type of tree. Have you seen other kinds of trees? Do you know any other names of trees? What do you know about pine trees? Can we think of any other facts? Things like that. It's okay if your child doesn't know anything. That's where you get the chance to then explain some more about your knowledge. The awesome thing about shared book reading too is that none of these elements happen in a bubble. They all overlap and they all interact. And so as long as you're discussing the book as you're reading it, you're probably engaging in many of these elements of shared book reading. So for this next element, we're going to ask the child questions and give them some explanations about where potential breakdown of knowledge might happen. Okay, so this can be anything from a new word or a concept, or maybe just an interesting point of view that a character in the book has. So here I've got Little Blue Truck, another favorite. So if we go to this page, you can see the truck is going around. It says that he tried to swerve. That might be a new word. So you can talk about, what does it mean to swerve? Or have you ever swerved before? How do you think he was feeling when he swerved? That kind of thing. So you're just drawing attention to things a little bit deeper than just what's written on the page. So finally, we're going to talk about drawing connections between the book and your child's own life experiences. This is so important for your child to better comprehend and remember the information of the story read. This is something that lots of parents do naturally, okay? So you can do it either during your book or maybe after you finish the book and you kind of review what you've read and kind of share back the story again. You can talk about maybe an experience that you've had that was similar. But in this book, The View at the Zoo, on this page you'll see, oh my goodness, they get to a part of the zoo where there's a bunch of monkeys. And if you've been to the zoo with your child, you've probably seen monkeys, and maybe you can reflect on that experience. Did we see monkeys when we went to the zoo? How many monkeys do you think we saw? Did they look like these monkeys? Were they doing some of the silly things that these monkeys were doing? That kind of stuff. So if you can include one of these elements into your story time with your child, you're really helping them in countless ways, which can impact their reading fluency, their comprehension, language, even articulation in some cases, plus so many other things. Like I said, you're probably doing these things already, or if you aren't, they're so easy to implement. It's really not hard to do. With this strategy, you really can't go wrong, and your child will benefit just across the board. Now that I've talked about our activity for the day, I'd like to share with you the first Better Hearing and Speech Month tidbit. Did you know that speech language pathologists are trained to work on swallowing? This is something that very few people outside the field and adjacent fields know. You see, throughout the course of our education, speech pathology students intricately study the anatomy and physiology of the mouth and the throat. Well, think about eating and swallowing. Your food passes through all the same places until it enters your esophagus, which is all the way down here. So that's from here to here. Many of the problems people can have with swallowing occur before the esophagus, meaning our knowledge is the area of the body that makes us experts on recognizing issues when swallowing. We know this area. This is the area for speech too. Our close friends, the occupational therapists, also have great expertise in this area as well. So if you need help with swallowing in the future, and I hope you don't, but if you do, you're most likely to see either a speech pathologist or an occupational therapist. And if you're really lucky, you might see them both. Well, that's all I have for today. Thanks for joining me for the 4th episode of the Brain Speech Bubble. Just a friendly reminder, I am available for speech therapy through Brains. Please call the number listed, or you can email me directly with questions. Happy Better Hearing and Speech Month, and remember, keep those kids talking.